How do people know they need to go to therapy?
It's a good question. I think there are several reasons, right? So it can be that someone is at a crisis point. Either you're in a crisis in your relationship, you're in a crisis at work, you're experiencing some pretty significant depression or anxiety, perhaps you're struggling with like an eating disorder, or you feel like you're drinking too much or something like that, right? So those might seem kind of obvious, except oftentimes when we are in crisis, that's when we don't feel like we have a whole lot of energy, right? And so reaching out for therapy can be even harder during a crisis point, but that's really when people need so much support.
And to kind of further the point that you were talking about with anxiety, you know, life is really hard, right? It has been particularly hard the past decade, past 5 years have been really, really hard. And it is important, right, to like find support and to find a person who maybe is not your family or not your best friend, right? Who is unbiased and also willing to maybe like gently address, you know, some negative behaviors that you might be having, that you can talk to and develop some coping skills and some resiliency, so that way when life continues to happen to you, you can feel prepared because of the things that you've learned in therapy.
And I think it also kind of gets at that it doesn't always have to be a crisis, but it can be a transition point, right? So it could be that you have gotten through the crisis. Maybe you've decided to get separated or divorced and you need help in that transition, or you've decided to move, you've decided to find a new job and you just need help in that transition. Or even you're still in the deciding phase, but it doesn't feel super overwhelming, but you don't necessarily have others to ask for that support. Or maybe you've kind of tapped out your resources, right? So our family and friends can be really helpful, but sometimes they either don't really help because the way they try to help, I think in particular, like when you go through a breakup, right? If you have that friend who just really wants to trash your ex, at some points that's helpful and other points it's not, right? Like, okay, we've done that, I need to move on, how can you help me with that? And family and friends don't always get that,
right?
You know?
Yeah, definitely. I also think that therapy can be a really empowering experience for a lot of people. You learn a lot about yourself, and I think you also learn how to create your own space in the world. So one of my favorite things to work on with clients when they come to therapy is like boundary setting, assertiveness practice, right? Learning how to communicate, which can sound silly, right? Because everybody knows how to communicate, but communicating in a way that is empowering and advocating for yourself, that's one of the things that I think people don't plan to do when they come to therapy, right? But it often comes up, right? The importance of being able to like stand up for yourself and believe in your own self-worth and your value and your purpose in the world.
Yeah. And I think kind of following up on this sense of purpose is maybe, you know, I keep saying like finding yourself in a new work situation, but it may be that you have been doing whatever, something for a long period of time, and you just, it doesn't feel right. Things feel off. You can't necessarily say, I know I want to find a new job, or I'm struggling in this relationship and I want to find a new one. You just have that like kind of ambiguity and the icks. And I think that can be really helpful because when you talk with family and friends, right, very often they want to help you solve the problem, which is totally great and isn't necessarily what you need.
Yeah.
And so I think having someone that you can just kind of meander through whatever it is you're experiencing with can be really helpful and has certainly been helpful to me.
Yes, I agree.